What's going on, everybody? Impromptu video here. Just want to discuss what I learned, and hopefully this ends up staying true. But they jumbled around the top three events, all of them happening at 170 after Khamzat Chimaev missed weight by 7.5 pounds. After once you consider the fact that you're allowed 171 in non-title fights. Regardless of that, Li Jingliang is now fighting Daniel Rodriguez after Nate Diaz decided, hey, I'm not going to fight Khamzat Chimaev when he's going to come in on, the weigh-ins weighing 178 pounds. Nor do I blame him. That was a fight where he was a sacrificial lamb to begin with, kind of being sacrificed by the UFC to Khamzat Chimaev. I don't think anybody was in question that Nate was going to win, was probably going to have a tough time in that fight. Regardless of what happened in the past, we now have Khamzat Chimaev fighting the guy that was his co-partner in starting the brawl that ended up in the press conference being canceled, Kevin Holland. So Khamzat Chimaev versus Kevin Holland, and then of course that leaves the last two: Nate Diaz taking on Tony Ferguson, and that's so much of a better matchup. And there was a lot of people who were actually out there clamoring and saying, "Hey, why isn't this the matchup that we saw from the beginning?" Or, "Hey, why is Tony Ferguson jumping in on short notice to fight a guy who is big for 170?" Tony, most recently, I think it was only 4 months ago when he fought Michael Chandler, coming in at 155 pounds. Now we look drained, but to be 38, 39 years old and have to drain down to 155. Potentially, you could see a better Tony Ferguson up here at 170, but it didn't look like he packed on a lot of productive weight. So it was just really questionable to see him taking on Li Jingliang, especially on such short notice. But this card got so much better without changing or losing any fighters. Kevin Holland, notorious, fought at 85 before. So him taking on Khamzat Chimaev, not that big of a stretch, far bigger or far less of a stretch than Nate Diaz taking on Khamzat Chimaev at that point. So let's talk about the first fight that we have now. Li Jingliang taking on Daniel Rodriguez. Daniel Rodriguez, we talked about it earlier at our Pick and Fights video. I would say go watch it, but at this point, it kind of means nothing unless you're interested in one of the undercard fights, or one of the prelim fights, or one of the lesser known, less notoriety fights on the main card. Li Jingliang has big power. He's fast. He throws overhands, and he has some good grappling ability. Don't let his fight against Khamzat Chimaev fool you. He can hold himself on the ground. Daniel Rodriguez is decent on the ground, but he's a guy who is primarily a boxer, and he uses his leg kicks. I think at the end of the day, this is a really, really good matchup for both of these guys because they have power. They like to stand and bang, and it's going to ultimately be a stand-up fight. We haven't seen Daniel Rodriguez have a ton of chin issues. He did, and I'm because this is so impromptu, I'm forgetting the guy that he got knocked down by a couple of times and had to come back. I think it was only 3 or 4 fights ago. Had to come back in order to get the win. His name is on the tip of my tongue. I want to say, is it Dwight Grant? Maybe. Either way, Daniel Rodriguez at times has shown a bit of chin issues, having to fight back and then ultimately getting the win over the guy who I think it was Dwight Grant. But again, don't quote me on that. I can't remember. My memory is constantly failing me. Nevertheless, I think Li Jingliang is going to have the bigger power here. He's a guy who has gotten knockouts, most notably in his most recent fight. I don't know if Li Jingliang is going to put away Daniel Rodriguez. I think we're going to see some really, really fun scraps here because these are guys who are able to fight each other, but they haven't been training for each other. So it's pretty much as even and level of a playing field for everybody as it can be. And we're going to really see these guys go out there and just have a good old-fashioned scrap and probably not be too technical, probably not go in there with an outlined game plan that they're looking to go in and accomplish. I think Li Jingliang is probably going to take this one. I think he is going to be. Now, the thing is Li Jingliang is a little bit, he's explosive, but I've noticed sometimes he can be a little bit of a counter striker. And Daniel Rodriguez, having the boxing background, he's going to have an active front jab, and especially with the leg kicks. If he can immobilize Li Jingliang, that puts a lot of pressure on Li to try and come back and land one of those power shots and stagger Daniel Rodriguez. If D-Rod can put his game plan on against Li Jingliang, there's a really good opportunity for him to win this fight too. Abstractly, I think Li Jingliang is gonna get the win here, but I think there's two far better fights to talk about, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on this one, even though it is a good fight. Khamzat Chimaev taking on Kevin Holland. Khamzat being demoted from the main event to now the co-main. I have to imagine after his weight miss and some of the shenanigans that he called, not some, all of the shenanigans that he caused and was involved in yesterday. I mean, it takes two to tango, but to say that Khamzat Chimaev was the catalyst. I don't think a lot of people would have too much of an argument with. Khamzat Chimaev, I mean, it's really interesting. He's almost approaching like Conor McGregor level mystique, where he goes out and he smashes people, and people want to watch him fight, and that affords him the ability to kind of do whatever he wants to a certain degree outside of the cage. And when I say certain degree, I'm not even sure there is a limit on what he can do outside of the cage and still be able to fight. He missed, by 8 pounds, caused one of the largest scrums that UFC's ever seen, and forced them to actually cancel the press conference. One that I'm sure the UFC and the UFC fans were looking forward to highly. So I really want to see if there is a limit on what Khamzat Chimaev can do and face limited repercussions. I have to imagine there's going to be somewhat of a repercussion. I know he is pretty deep into crypto, and him and Darren Till, they have their Smash Bros NFT, but him against Kevin Holland, here's the thing. Kevin Holland is a really, really good striker, and he shows that best at 170. But this fight is really probably going to be taking place at 185. I commend Kevin Holland for going out there and constantly be willing to fight anybody, anytime. He's the gangster that a lot of people think that Khamzat Chimaev may be. Khamzat Chimaev, I mean, with his brawl or alleged brawl or scrum or whatever you want to call it with Paulo Costa, I mean, both of them are standing behind a fence. Khamzat's being pulled away, and there's an opening in the fence right to their right or their left, depending on which side you're looking at, and neither of them went around to engage. So, I mean, Khamzat Chimaev, there's a big narrative going around now that real gangsters make weight, and he hasn't. And Khamzat Chimaev has struggled to make weight for the past few fights now. He's a big guy for 170, and he's caught right in that 15-pound gap. I think he could actually contend at 85, although he's a little bit smaller there. I think Khamzat Chimaev is going to have no problem getting Kevin Holland down to the ground and potentially holding there if he chooses to. Now, Kevin Holland, he does have those sneaky submissions. Travis Lutter, black belt. You could see him potentially throw something up there, but I don't think that if Gilbert Burns could throw something up, I don't think that Kevin Holland is going to be able to get it off. I think at this point, Kevin Holland is probably a little bit better of a precision striker than Gilbert Burns is, but Gilbert Burns may have the power advantage. Ultimately, I think we're going to see another great fight, but I think Khamzat is going to get the finish in this one. I think he is going to land some big shots that's going to get on Kevin Holland, but Kevin Holland is going to be far lankier in this matchup here, and I think he's going to be able to use that to his advantage as well. Maybe he can try to keep Khamzat away from him by landing some good hard shots that prevents Khamzat from coming in and trying to take him down. But again, from the past history of what we've seen, especially up at what is now going to be 80 or an 85 fight, Kevin Holland has an issue with defending takedowns, especially as the fight goes on. I think he's probably going to be giving up a little bit of a strength advantage here. So I think Khamzat Chimaev is going to be able to get Kevin Holland to the ground, and if at nothing else, that'll be able to allow him to grind to a decision victory. And I think he's going to land heavy shots. I don't know if we're going to see a finish in this one. If we do, I would imagine would probably be Kevin Holland. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the last time, if ever, he has been finished via TKO. From just straight strikes, but I'm concerned that for Kevin Holland, we may see him take an L here. But to his credit, he didn't have to take this fight. He chose to, stepped up once again for the UFC, being a company man. If he ends up taking an L here, I think ultimately it'll still rise his stock because I think he'll do well in the fight. And the mystique that's around Khamzat Chimaev as a fighter for his ability, if Kevin Holland can go out there, contend, and put on a good fight, I mean, Gilbert Burns, I don't think he lost any credit or thought with anybody after his fight with Khamzat Chimaev, and I think Kevin Holland is in there for a repeat performance, or should I say, he's going to have the same type of notoriety come his way, positive press that Gilbert Burns got for going in there and sticking it out. Being that Khamzat and Kevin Holland were the two guys that were the catalyst to starting that scrum yesterday that led to the pre-fight press conference being canceled, I love this fight. It's awesome. I can't wait. I think Khamzat Chimaev is going to win. I don't know if he's going to put Kevin Holland away, but I think no matter how you shake it out, this is going to be a really, really good fight. Unless Khamzat decides to go in there, take Holland down, and just hold him down, but that doesn't really seem like it's in his character. If anything, he's going to be active off the top. Kevin Holland is going to try and throw up submissions. He maybe try to get him in an armbar, but like I said, if Gilbert Burns wasn't able to, I'm not so positive that Kevin Holland is going to be able to do that either. So I like potentially what could happen if this fight goes to the ground, but it's far more exciting if it stays on its feet and Kevin Holland tries to use distance and tries to pick Khamzat Chimaev apart. But you got to be, Khamzat Chimaev, he likes to throw that left that left or the right straight, and then dip under with the uppercut. That's something that Kevin Holland is definitely going to have to be aware of. You knew that Gilbert Burns was aware of it. With the limited amount of time to prepare and to game plan and strategize, you just got to wonder if Kevin Holland is going to be a little bit more susceptible to getting hit. And then I guess vice versa for Khamzat Chimaev, because he's got such an ability to just rush in and try to maul people without having a game plan, or not having the time to strategize for his opponent. That actually may be a tick in his corner, because he expects other people to play to his strengths and not vice versa. So that's another reason why I might want to give Khamzat Chimaev the edge there. So I'm going to go with Khamzat Chimaev, as much as it pains me, but I don't think Kevin Holland can lose, whether he loses the fight or he wins the fight. Either way, I think he's coming out on top, and he's going to gain a lot more followers. Not that he needs it, a lot more fans, and definitely a really good standing with the UFC. And then finally, our new main event, Nate Diaz taking on Tony Ferguson. And this is a fantastic fight. And I'm a Tony Ferguson lover, so having to pick against Tony Ferguson, against Li Jingliang, that really pained me. But it was a bad matchup for him. Knowing that Nate Diaz is not going to throw the power shots that Li Jingliang has, and if they decide to go to the ground, having that mix of styles of Tony Ferguson's ground game, aggressive off the back submission style, throwing nasty elbows against Nate, who's going to be on top and do jiu-jitsu and be open to blood. We are going to see a lot of blood here. The only thing that concerns me is, again, Tony Ferguson, no matter which way you slice it, he's still coming in after a brutal front kick knockout, one of the most brutal we've ever seen in the UFC. He's 38, 39 years old, and he's coming in, I think it's only 3 or 4 months after. I'm a little bit concerned, but being that Nate Diaz is Nate Diaz, and it's the accumulation of punches that's going to get to you, I'm far less concerned. I really don't know which way to go with this. You have Nate Diaz, who is in questionable shape when he comes in, saying, I didn't even train for the fight that much. And, if he knew maybe 3, 4, 5 months ago, or 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, that he was going to be fighting Tony Ferguson, I can almost guarantee you that he would have a lot more of a camp, a lot more dedication to getting ready. Being that he didn't, I think that plays a little bit more to Tony Ferguson, because Tony Ferguson is ready for no matter what. For anything at all. Tony Ferguson is training for fire floods and anything of the sort that may happen to him, or that may happen while the fight is going on. So that being said, I think I see Tony Ferguson trying to come in a little wonky. I see Nate Diaz doing some crazy stuff. There's been a string of him twerking and kind of twerking the last few times he's been in the cage, turns his back on his opponents. That's not something I would want to do against Tony Ferguson. But if this fight goes to the ground, I guess I don't even know who I'm going to give the edge to. Maybe Nate Diaz, because of his jiu-jitsu prowess, and as time goes on, these jiu-jitsu guys, they seem to be able to kind of withstand a lot of their longevity when they go to the ground. But Tony Ferguson, like I said, always active off the ground, and Nate is hittable. Tony Ferguson, does he have that put away power, especially after being on a 4 or 5 fight losing streak, coming in after getting brutally knocked out? Here's the thing. When he fought against Michael Chandler, he was doing well in that first round, sticking, moving. He was slipping well. He was throwing good kicks. He was throwing good elbows, throwing good overhands. I kind of want to give the edge to Tony Ferguson. I think this one is probably going to go to, if it's 5 rounds, I think it's going to go to decision. And this is what I would put on the docket for fight of the night, potentially fight of the year. Just everything surrounding UFC 279 in the last 2 days, 24 hours, less, 12 hours, 36 hours, whatever the math is, 18 hours. It's been incredible, and this is definitely something that's going to go down in history here. As far as my picks, I'm taking Li Jingliang over Daniel Rodriguez. I'm taking Khamzat Chimaev over Kevin Holland, and I'm taking Tony Ferguson by decision over Nate Diaz. I think it's going to be the activity for Tony Ferguson that's going to be able to get him the points with the judges. I don't think either of these guys are going to finish each other. I think we're in for a really, really interesting scrap, and I'm just so thrilled with how everything transpired from yesterday, having the press conference be broken up and canceled, and trying to piece through all the riffraff and going on Twitter and refreshing everything, refreshing Ariel Helwani's page to try and piece together what happened that caused them to break up the press conference, and then finding out that it was Kevin Holland and Khamzat Chimaev that got into it and started the whole thing. And now to find out that those are the guys that are going to be fighting in the co-main event, that's a far better matchup than, Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz or Kevin Holland. I mean, Kevin Holland versus D-Rod is not a bad matchup at all, but Khamzat Chimaev versus Kevin Holland, I imagine, probably at 180 because that's what Kevin was preparing to fight at, and that's pretty much the weight that Khamzat Chimaev made. This is going to be a phenomenal card. I'm so excited. It's only Friday at 3:48 p.m. I wish it was tomorrow already. I think just between this main and co-main, this has turned into one of the cards that I've been most excited about all year. And I know that there is the recency bias that goes into that, and because it was so crazy and how everything got put together, I'm sure that has some impact on why I'm so excited for it. But I said it before, I'll say it again. I'm a Tony Ferguson lover. I love watching him fight, and him matched up with Nate Diaz. I actually Nate, Tony, and Connor. Any pairing of those three guys, and throw Chandler in there too. Any pairing of those four guys, you can sign me up for. So I'm happy that we're going to get to see this one. Hopefully, Nate can, go out there, put on a good showing, because it doesn't seem like he's going to be re-signed to the UFC. It doesn't seem like he wants it at all. So he's going to go out there, probably put on a good show, and then maybe he'll be able to go and box Jake Paul or do something else. But the Nate Diaz army is not going away, and I think it would only get stronger now after this great performance. I mean, he's a guy who went out there and he wobbled Leon Edwards at the end of their fight. So he's never out of it no matter what. Nate Diaz doesn't lose. He just runs out of time. I think this was the first time against Khamzat where we were potentially picking or it was probable that we were going to see Nate Diaz actually lose within the distance. I shouldn't say first time, but definitely one of the more recent times, or the most recent that we've ever seen it. But I don't think this fight ends in the distance here, Nate and Tony. I think this one goes to the judges' scorecards, and I think activity is going to be on Tony's side. I think both guys may stun each other at different times and land their good shots. I think we're going to see a lot of blood in this fight. I think both guys are going to love it. I think the fighters are going to be happy, the fans are happy, the UFC is happy, and it all worked out. So, does anybody, you're out there. I see there's a couple of people watching. Drop me a comment. I'll stay on for a little bit. I want to talk to you guys. Let me know what you think after this change up to UFC 279. And how funny would it be if this ends up being a total rumor and I got thrown for a loop? I get all excited and this actually isn't what's going to happen tomorrow. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Khamzat Chimaev taking on Kevin Holland, Nate Diaz taking on Tony Ferguson, Li Jingliang taking on Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. I'm so pumped. I think this is going to be a fun night of fights, especially the main card. There was a lot of good fights on the undercard too that we're kind of glossing over here just because it's not the talk of the town right now. But with that being said, if nobody has any comments, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll come back to you and let you know what's going on for or what our picks are for the Corey Sandhagen fight card next weekend. Thanks so much, everyone.